Thanks for inviting me to share. I guess Operation Spectrum has quite a special place in my heart because many of the things which the activists were involved in then are things which I'm still involved in now, which is primarily working on migrant workers' rights. So when I first heard about Operation Spectrum, this was on the Singapore Window website. Yeah, and I was very intrigued. I always wondered who these people were, but reading the accounts of what happened to the detainees still felt very academic to me and still felt very distant at the time, even though that information was already available on the internet. Though of course the information now is a lot more, but I really felt a sense of affinity when I read those extracts. Then when I started this work, I had friends, some of my friends who were also politically inclined, telling me, oh, you should be careful, because the Operation Spectrum detainees at the time were also involved in migrant worker issues. So now you're getting involved in this, you should be careful yourself. What if you also get arrested and detained? And I thought to myself, nah, I don't think that's going to happen, Yeah, this was so long ago. It just felt like a very distant thing. So, so I never really thought that that I would have any brush, with ISD officers. That was until the SMRT strike happened in 2011. And at the time, I and a bunch of other colleagues and friends were involved in advocating for them and trying to tell their stories through a blog site that we set up called Workfare, because when we looked at how the mainstream media was treating the strike issue, they were painting the strikers as criminals, and you could see all these mug shots of them, splashed all over the Straits Times. So we wanted to tell their story, so we created a blog site, and we were quite close to them, to the drivers who went on strike, and then we found on the day that we bailed them out, that people were following us already, and they were also following the drivers. And we found it out when we went to the dormitory to try and pick up their belongings, that there were all these black cars following us. So we were like, okay. So, I mean, when this happens to you for the first time, you think to yourself, I think it's just paranoia. I don't think, they actually, this is really ISD. I mean, even to this day, I can't confirm it, because these things can never be confirmed. But over the subsequent weeks and months, we found ourselves being followed a lot. And then we decided, okay, let's just make a police report. So we made so we took the pictures of the cars that followed us with the car license plate and everything. And we made a police report. It said, these cars are harassing us. And then we put it on our blog site. And said, oh, all these cars, these mysterious cars are following us. And then we kept chasing up the police officer. Can you give us an outcome? Who are these mysterious cars? Who are these people who are following us? And then one day the police officer just called, and then he said, we have investigated. Next time if they follow you again, just call us lah. So that was the only thing he said to me, when I tried to pursue them. And I said, but who was it? He refused to give a straight answer, and he just said, just next time if you get followed again, just make another police report. So the same thing also happened when I think the Little India riot happened a few years ago, and me and a bunch of other colleagues and friends were involved in trying to advocate for especially the rioters, the so-called rioters who were deported back to India, and when we went to Little India again, we found ourselves being followed. So yes, despite the fact that the government says that the space is a lot more open now, you can voice your opinion, you can get involved in active citizenry. These kinds of things still happen. They still try to strike fear in you. I mean, how could us being involved in advocating for the strike drivers or the Little India, or the workers involved in the Little India riot possibly be an internal security threat? So the fear was definitely put into us, but 30 years on, as Elvin and Priscilla have mentioned, this fear still manifests itself in many different ways. I still get phone calls, yeah, from MOM directors saying that, my organization still gets communications from them saying that they're not happy with certain comments that we have made, or they're not happy that we're involved in particular projects. And I recall back in 2008 when the financial crisis happened, and the Straits Times actually interviewed us to ask my view on what the government was doing to assist all these migrant workers who were being laid off. And I said, MOM's laws are insufficient to protect them. And just that one little quote, yeah, made MOM really angry, and they requested to meet us to tell us that we were not supposed to make these kinds of remarks. I mean, ordinarily, if you look at across the causeway, as Priscilla has said, you know, the activists there will say, whatever, you know, I don't care. Yeah, you can say what you want. But in Singapore, the self-censorship, the fear is just so strong. And a lot of that is actually also tied to funding, as Elvin has also mentioned. And the organization, Home, that I work with, we do a lot of direct services. Yeah, so our funding for services that we do is also possibly at risk, even though we don't even get government funding. Yeah, but because Singapore is such a small country and everything is so closely connected, the way the politics of power here works is such that even if those who give you funding are not from government, they are also scared of the government. Yeah, so we also get these kinds of talks from our supporters and our donors. Maybe you should tone down, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't say that. Yeah, so these kinds of concerns are real, and of course the internalized fear will make some of my colleagues and management say things like, maybe we shouldn't go too far on this matter. So our activism, our advocacy is definitely compromised. But there are a lot of people, I mean, now the situation has changed somewhat in that you do see people speak truth to power. Bloggers and all that are becoming more vocal and critical. But we are also very, in that sense, very divided. Yeah, because we still get comments from people saying, why are you doing things in this way? You shouldn't do it in that way. And so these kinds of internal divisions will form. And I think it's inevitable in any civil society, because I've been to meetings, regional civil society meetings, and these kinds, and debates about strategy and all that do happen, and civil societies in other places are also divided by these kinds of strategic concerns. But all I can say is that even though we have different strategies, we have different tactics, we shouldn't criticize each other, and that we should respect each other's method and each other's strategy, and that there has to be solidarity. So while I know I could never criticize in the way that, say, Roy does or Han Hui Hui does, but whenever and whatever that the state does to them is definitely wrong. But I do what I can to reach out and to express solidarity. And I think this is just so important in our movement, that even if we feel that we cannot engage in certain types of advocacy, we should still not blame each other or criticize each other for it, but to show that we're all in this struggle together. So my time is up, so actually a lot more to say, but that's all.